Today I want to tell you a little bit about 4 game books that I recently played, read, experienced, and I enjoyed them all to a different extent, of course, but they are all good game books in my opinion. So it's different from my usual videos, which tend to be about the board games. But what the heck, I've been reading a lot of game books lately. Since I became aware that there is right now, still going on right now, a renaissance of the game book form. If you were young in the 80s or the 90s, you probably remember game books like the fighting fantasy game books, or also the more broader category of branching fiction that branches out, starts from one place, gives you choices. If you want to do this, read that page. If you want to do that, read that other page. And from there on, the story develops in multiple endings, in multiple directions. Choose Your Own Adventure books were the ones that started it all. Then we had Endless Quest, many other series of that kind. I tend to make a difference to keep two things separated when talking about choose your own adventure type of books and game books, because the choose your own adventure books, Endless Quest, and all of those of that category were narrative only, were purely narrative. You didn't have game procedures. But then there were other books that were based on the same branching idea, same interactive idea, but also had game procedures in them, maybe life points, inventory that you had to keep track of, fluctuating stats, you leveled up, you had a combat system. So those were more complex, and very often they tended to have more of a puzzle-oriented quality. Now, both purely narrative branching fiction and the game book branching fiction had a huge market in the 80s and in the 1990s, the early 1990s. Towards the middle of the decade, it went down and the market pretty much fell apart. And I thought that was it. That was the end of it. Little did I know, only recently did I realize that actually they're making a comeback. There have been Kickstarter projects for game books, or in any case for choose your own adventure type books that have been hugely successful. All books are being republished in new, better, updated editions. New ones are being written and published. So actually, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty exciting to me. It is probably related to the same phenomenon that has brought about the board game renaissance. I mean, back in the 1990s, we all thought that by now we wouldn't be playing board games. We would all be playing video games. Back in the day, you used to do your thing, and then you went home and you wanted to stare into a screen to play a video game. Now you're staring into a screen all day. Probably when you go home, sometimes you still want to watch TV and play a video game. But some of us now also feel the need of having a physical game to play with. We appreciate the beauty of the components. We like to roll dice, shuffle those cards, move those counters around, and to have a direct interaction with the people in the same room. How amazing is that? So we're going back to analog entertainment after our jobs have become so digital oriented. And something similar seems to be happening with interactive fiction. We are even better equipped now than we were in the 80s to play, experience, enjoy interactive fiction, because we've been we are so used to it now. We have been trained by digital interactive forms. But at the same time, now we also like the idea of holding a good old book in our hands. A Kindle is all fine and nice, and you press things around and stuff, and you do your things. But books that you read, you stick your fingers in there as you proceed. See the technique of the multi-finger bookmark. It's fun, and I think it's interesting that there are new books that are being published in this form, and the old ones that are being published also have more of an adult feel to them now. I'm going to tell you today about 4 books that were originally published in the 90s, and now they've been republished, reissued. And the covers are much more appealing now because they're less garish, less cartoonish, much more mature. Not in the sense that they're pornographic, but in the sense that they're more sober. They're definitely aimed and a more sophisticated audience. It also so happens that they are some of the most linguistically, stylistically sophisticated books that were published at the time. Some of the simply put, some of the best written game books that I know of. They're written well. They have a good prose, good style, extended detail, vocabulary. It's a pleasure to read that prose. It's good prose, and it also happens to be interactive, and you can play with that prose. You can be the protagonist of the story. Originally, these books were published, the ones I'm going to tell you about today, were published in the 1990s, the early 1990s, in what was then the virtual reality series. Now, not all of them, but 4 of them have been republished under different label as Critical, IF, and they're all by Dave Morris, not all the original ones in the virtual reality were written by Morris, but it seems that Morris has become involved in bringing back some of his old glories. So I enjoy them all, and I want to tell you about these books. First, about the system, the game system. These are game books in that they're not purely narrative. They do have game procedures, but they're very light. And there is a system that underlies all books in the Critical IF/virtual reality system. So once you know it, you can use it in all of them. But it's so simple that even if you had to relearn it, it wouldn't be a big deal. In each book, you choose a character from some pre-generated ones, or you can create your own. What really characterizes each character is a set of 4 skills, abilities from a list of 10 possible ones in each book. For example, you can be the warrior and you would have agility, etiquette, you're a very polite warrior, swordplay, or unarmed combat. Maybe you're the hunter, then you will have agility, targeting, unarmed combat, and wilderness lore. And you may be the mystic, the wayfarer, merchant, acolyte, sorcerer. Different books with different settings will have different professions, and each profession has different set of skills. But again, you have 10 possible skills, and if you don't like any of the pre-generated characters, you simply create your own. These are very interesting, these skills, because basically they determine and they affect the action, and they replace any complex procedure that you would have, for example, in fighting fantasy game books or in solitaire role-playing games like the Tunnels and Trolls. Simply put, certain things happen because you have certain skills. You have them, that thing happens. You don't have them, a certain skill at a certain juncture, something else happens. That's simple. They direct the story, they play a huge role, they increase the replay value because you can try the story with different sets, but you do not have to learn anything past the skills that you have. The book takes care of that. How the skills work has been hardwired in the system already. For example, you're attacked and the text tells you you lose 5 points in this combat, you lose 5 life points. Unless you have unarmed combat, then you lose only 4, but if you have swordplay and a sword, you lose only 2. It's all abstracted in there, but it works. It works pretty well. It's less tactical, of course, but it really works. It's always a trade-off. If a game is very tactical, then the tactical resolution of combat is an interruption from the flow of the story. These are very narrative-oriented books, so I think it works well that the story keeps flowing and that the resolution of actions based on skill is all factored in the main flow of the story. Other things, you had to take life points into account. You go down to 0, you're dead. There is an inventory. There is a system of code words. You acquire them, and then sometimes you're asked whether you have them or not, which is a simple way of keeping the continuity of the story tight to take into account the things that happen earlier and that may affect other things that may happen later. Very basic system. So that the story, really, the experience of reading the story, of experiencing the story, is at the core of your reading. Now, let's start with the first one. I place them in order from the one that I liked a little less to the one that I liked the most. And I liked even this one that was in this family is the one that I found a little less appealing. This is called Necklace of Skulls. It is set in the world of Mayan pre-Columbian myth and lore. And this is something that other books also have in common. Not the specific setting, but instead of just tossing you in a garden variety, overdone high fantasy world that you've seen a billion times, they take lore from around the world and they turn it into a quasi fantasy setting. So here, instead of fighting your traditional orcs and goblins and monsters, you fight or you encounter monsters from Mayan lore and tradition, which is very refreshing. It feels familiar because you do have the sense of sort of fantasy like experience. It is exciting and exotic because you do experience encounters with creatures that you do not see every day, and yet it is very refreshing because you haven't met some of the beasts and monsters in this specific bestiary. In this specific book, you play the role of a warrior, wayfarer, acolyte, depends on your profession. But the point is that your brother disappeared, apparently has been killed or taken prisoner by an evil wizard, sorcerer, and you need to travel across uninhospitable lands to figure out what happened and try to rescue your brother. It's good. It's a good book. It's a fun, entertaining book. It just is dwarfed a little bit by the other ones that to me are more interesting because they're less linear. This one felt a little linear, especially at the end. I'm trying not to give you spoilers. At the end, there is a fairly linear situation in which you have to go through a series of tests of initiation. There's a sort of initiation that you go through, and that felt a little too linear, much more than you would have in other books. Other books have, and I really like that, more of a sandbox quality. In other books in the system, you have a beginning, an inciting incident, an optimal ending that you're trying to reach, but then there are a lot of ways that you can go about. There is a world, an empty world that you have the sense you can navigate with a lot of freedom. And Necklace of Skulls to me had that a little less. But one that does have that in spades is Once Upon a Time in Arabia. This book was published in the 1990s, and it is the only one that I'm telling about today that was originally published with a significantly different title. Originally, this was Twist of Fate. And I think the new title tells us more about the setting and the general idea. So this time the lore is Middle Eastern lore from the world that we tend to identify with the world of the Arabian Nights. You are in old Baghdad and you are merchant, sorcerer, whatever it is that you've chosen to be. And you're getting yourself in trouble because you overheard Jafar, the remember the Disney movie? Wasn't there a guy called Jafar in a Disney movie? Jafar, the evil counselor, the evil minister that is planning to take control of the kingdom, is planning to dethrone the ruler and to become himself the ruler. You overheard that, and then after you were silly enough to get caught, so now Jafar knows that he knows of his evil plans, and he's not particularly happy about. So after this initial scene, which I believe, I have to say, is a little forced, feels a little forced, you leave Baghdad, just running from Jafar, but with the idea that you'll come back when you're ready. It's unclear then what would be the condition. Maybe it would have been more interesting to keep it a little more vague, like now you just have to escape and run away. And then at some point when you find the solution, it does in your mind, oh, look at that, I stumble upon something that if I go back now I can use to my advantage to fight Jafar. But the idea that from the beginning, pretty much it's hinted at you that the story will allow you to come back and there will be a final confrontation. I don't know, that was a little forced. So the beginning is a little bit like this, but which is not ideal. There are a couple of stretches here. You feel a little forced in your choices. The situation feels a little forced. But then the book really opens up and becomes super fun and exciting when you start traveling around this world. You have many places that you can go, many ways of getting killed, slaughtered, in trouble. And you have monsters and creatures the likes of which you may expect from a game in a book with this setting. The rock bird, evil wizards, evil monsters. So, but what I really like here is, again, the sandbox quality. Between the initial point and the final confrontation, because at the end you will be magically sucked in back into Baghdad. You have to deal with a lot of different things, but there's a lot of variety in there. You can experience and travel around, and I really enjoyed that. So I have two fixed points, and a lot of freedom in between. The next book is one that does something similar, but I really loved it because it does it to me even better. This is Down Among the Dead Men, which is a pirate story. And the lore of the pirates. So, your pirates horror. It is set in a sort of fantasy, early modern world, vaguely 16th century ish. You're going to the side of the ocean, seeing the New World's colonies, hanging around in these reputable towns by the sea with the most, with the least showered and some of the most dangerous pirates ever. And you also have the fantasy element in that you do have magic, you do have wizards, you do have the undead, mermaids, witches. And the plot that you're trying to foil has, in fact, to do with magic. What happens here? At the beginning of the book opens and you have been prisoner on the ship of an evil pirate, an evil captain, and you manage to escape with a group of other people. That's it. You think, okay, my mission here is simply to live and never be seen again. Yes, yes, yes. But again, you got the notion, you figured out, you found enough information before you left to realize that your captain is planning something big, not just another raid, not just another theft, but something much bigger and political. So here, what is pretty cool is that you're going around various seaports and sea towns and strange islands and strange places where you try to escape from monsters and find all sorts of crazy situations. But you're also trying to collect clues as to what is the big plan that the big evil guy that kept you prisoner for a long time is putting together. And also, I'm trying not to spoil anything here, but let's say there are the important characters that are moving in the world. So you're trying to figure out where's that character right now and where's the captain right now. The captain that still, if he can find me, will probably want to kill me because he knows that I know. I really like the fact that there is a sandbox quality like you have in the book in here. There is freedom. You get a sense that you can roam around these southern islands and visit various places. But at the same time, there is a very remarkable balance between a sense between that freedom that you have exploring the interactive world and a sense of narrative tightness, narrative coherence. You do get the sense that you're not just exploring sort of like narrative rooms that are floating into space or in the sea. You do get the sense that you're moving onto a map where time does go by, and that as you're doing certain things, that the characters are doing certain other things. I like the fact that before the book is over, if you don't die earlier, you will get to meet with several characters several times, and some confrontations will be pretty dramatic. I'm trying to keep it as vague as I can, but to me the key that really makes this book stand apart is precisely this. There is a narrative cohesiveness which is remarkable, that you do not always find in Gamebooks, and even a sense of time which really goes well with a sense of space. Sense of space, any dungeon that you navigate, you may get a sense this is north, this is south. But sometimes you also know that if you go back to a room, things will be exactly how they were before. Like time doesn't really pass. Here you have a much more successful and effective creation of a narrative world in which you do get the sense that you're acting and time is moving fast and you know that something's up and you need to try to prevent whatever it is that the evil captain may be up to. It's really great. This is an excellent book. Last book I'm going to tell you about, my favorite in the critical AF range, originally virtual reality books, My favorite one is Heart of Ice, and one of the finest game books I ever read. And this is really a game book that you read, not just a game book that you play. It had the quality of the prose is very high, and the the setting is not historical fantasy anymore like you had there. It's sci-fi, and it's dark, gloomy sci-fi. And the world in the future has been messed up by an evil meteorological satellite that has simply completely skewed up the meteorology, the weather on the world, and has brought the world to a point where it is almost uninhabitable, and the few survivors are fighting to figure out a way of stopping this, if there is any way. And now in this, as you can see, in this area of the Mediterranean in North Africa, which is covered with ice and snow now in this gloomy future, you are you are trying to look for this mysterious artifact called the Heart of Volant, which apparently has enormous power, maybe will grant you omnipotence, maybe will grant you a magic wish. It is a strange insertion of a fantasy like element in an otherwise sci fi setting. But it's okay. Somehow it works well. It didn't offend me. I don't know. If I saw a dragon coming out, maybe it would have been different. Also kind of cool. But the scenario, the setting is actually pretty tight, and the atmosphere that this book creates is definitely very effective. It's a little depressing, which works perfectly. You don't just get an abstract sense, well, there's a mission I have to accomplish, and I'm going to try to accomplish it. You really have the sense of this world that drains you, that is gloomy, dark, gray, that has not just weakened mankind, but somehow taken away their fighting spirit, their will to live, has destroyed hope, and hasn't just destroyed the environment. And to me, that's very powerful, and the book is very effective. As I said, all of these books are well written. It's good prose. And yeah, I'm not just talking good prose linguistically. It's good prose in the sense that it tells a good story, and it designs good characters, good believable characters. Psychology has never been a forte in game books. In most game books, that's the way it should be. If you are playing Warlock of Fight of Mountain, you don't need to know too much about the feelings of your hero, the feelings of the monsters that you're slaying. But this is a game book which is about people. Not only are you a person, but there are very, very significant interactions that you have with other characters. So not only are you a more detailed and fleshed out character that you would see in other game books, not only is the setting more detailed and more, how can I say, perspicuous, more vivid than in other game books, but you're also surrounded by non-playing characters that have more depth, more believability, more of a personality than I've seen almost in any other game book. It's pretty impressive how you do get the sense that you are interacting with real people. There's been a particular care that's been paid in designing the psychology and the behavior of the non-playing characters, which really makes this book stand out. And this is very important because in the last part of the mission, you will find yourself joining a group of people that are all trying to look for the Heart of Volant. But forget those nice game books where you were the warrior and there was a halfling and a thief and an elf helping you, and you just tell them what to do and they go and do it. So it's just figment of your power, extension of your personality. These are people that are there to steal the Heart of Volant from you. They are banding together for the time being, simply to exploit each other. But there will be only one at the end. So it sort of starts as a cooperative adventure in which you're trying to maybe help each other, but you're also studying your companions, because you know that at the end the survivors will kill each other, will try to steal Art of Violence. And what if somebody's trying to actually start thinning out the number of people that are on the quest as soon as somebody appears to be not necessary? So it starts as a fantasy, sort of like Fellowship of the Ring, Fellowship story, and becomes an Agatha Christie novel, a la, and then there were none, in which people the number becomes more manageable, almost like the horror movie, where one by one the number is reduced. And so there is a psychological component. There's almost, I would say, a political component. Political in the sense that you are studying the power dynamics that go on between the companions, and that is a huge part of the adventure. The last part of the adventure, when you're looking for the heart, it may almost look like a dungeon crawl type of situation, but there is this other element of human interaction between you and your companions, which simply sets this book apart, makes it something pretty unique. It's hard to come by game books that have so much of that interaction. Heart of Ice, really excellent game book. The best of the critical IF range, that is the new format, the new incarnation of the old virtual reality series. So definitely the best of this family, but to me simply one of the finest game books that I have ever read. Yes, this is a big statement, big commitment, and I just committed to it. I just made that big statement. In any case, all good game books by Dave Morris, classic authors. I mean, probably you came across some of his books in the past if you have read game books at all. One of the big leagues, one of the major writers, and all of these books definitely are very fine. Some I liked more, some I liked better. Give them a try. It's a pleasure to read these old stories that don't feel old at all. They're playable, they're readable, they are enjoyable, and now we have these nice looking books that, again, there is a certain fascination to me in holding your book and flipping through the pages and making notes. Not that I don't make notes. I keep a separate sheet of paper, making notes on the sheet of paper that you keep in the book. Just like I enjoy board games, I enjoy books that are made of paper. You may have suspected that also already. Anyways, Heart of Ice, Necklace of Skulls, Once Upon a Time in Arabia, Down Among the Dead Men. The new incarnation of the old but still very strong, still very alive virtual reality series.